crew. It's been a minute. Good to see you. This is Kid Lips coming at you live. Who else we got here?
We got your boy Groovies, of course.
Of course, the classic. What are we gonna talk about today, Groovies? What's on the agenda?
Ooh, it's one of my favorites. It's what are your legal requirements for product labeling for your clothing line?
That is a mouthful. Wow. Also, I just want to highlight one point here. You just said legal. We don't normally use the word legal in our videos, and I do want to say this isn't go ask Sal or whatever. Saul.
Better ask Saul.
Right. This isn't the we're not your lawyers. So
we're like Saul, but we didn't pass the bar.
Right. Yeah. We're not lawyers, but we've got some legal information we're going to share with you today. We want to convey it as clearly as possible, but take the links below, do your own research, maybe talk to a lawyer if you have additional questions, and feel free to post in the comments because we definitely want to hear from you additional questions or things that come up.
So where do we get started?
Yeah, let's do this.
I guess there's really two pieces of legislation that are relevant at this point when it comes to making apparel products in the US or even selling apparel products. The first one is the Wool Act, Wool and Textile Act of 1939.
Was that 1939? That's what I thought. I remember 1939. That was a big year for wool and textiles. Okay.
Okay, yeah. And what it basically says is that you are required, if you're selling or importing or manufacturing apparel in the US, your products need to be labeled, and those labels need to contain some information about that product. I guess way back in 1939, people were doing some kind of unsavory business tactics, so the federal government stepped in and said, booyah, you gotta start labeling your stuff, and they put some rules and regulations about it. We'll jump into those right now.
Basically, what are the contents of this thing? That's really important. So when you're labeling your product, you gotta be upfront with people about what materials are being used. And the rule of thumb typically is the material that's most dominant in the garment goes first. So if it's 80% cotton, you say cotton 80%. 20% polyester, polyester 20%. If there's anything that's less than 5%, you don't have to mention it. However, if it contributes to the makeup and the construction of that garment, like let's say you add a little spandex in there to get some stretch and it's 3%, but that really affects the stretch, you do have to mention that because it's materially contributing.
Are you sure you're not a lawyer?
Right?
He's
you
a
would
lawyer.
think.
No, not a lawyer. All right, the next one is the origin. This one's pretty straightforward. You just have to say that the country that the good is being manufactured in. If you're getting your goods from China, you gotta state it. If you're getting them from Mexico, you're familiar with the Hecho en Mexico? Sí, señor. So also, if you're doing things in the United States, if your materials aren't coming from the United States, you can say made in the USA, but you have to say of imported materials. The next one, that was a quick one, so I'll do the next one too.
Yeah.
The next one is you also have to have your name on it. You have to either have the name of the brand that made it, the person responsible for either manufacturing it, importing it, or selling it. You could have any of those. Or you have to have the the registered identification number, which is basically a number that is assigned to you or to your manufacturer by the federal government, and it's just a unique identifier, so they can kind of track back and figure out who's done it, who made it.
And when in doubt, your manufacturer that made it should have an RN number. So don't take their label off if they've got it and use theirs.
Exactly. You got it.
Let me handle this.
You got it.
So, contrary to popular belief, the label actually does have to be in the neck. This is important. Placement, always in the back neck. Even if you want to put labels or branding elsewhere on the garment, which is totally cool, the important details, the care instructions, where it was made, the contents, all that, back of the neck.
Yeah, safest place is back of the neck. They basically say some place that's highly visible, and they essentially suggest put it in the neck. So there you go. And then this rule has some small teeth behind it. Essentially, if you're not following these rules, there are some penalties. It's like a misdemeanor if they come after you and find you guilty of this, and you can also get a penalty of $5,000.
5 G's.
That's a lot of money.
Cha-ching.
So that's basically all the Wool and Textile Act. There's a bunch of information that you got to put there in your label. Pretty straightforward and easily managed. But there's this other rule.
Part 2.
part 2, called the care labeling rule, and it also specifies some other things that you must contain in your label. And essentially it breaks down to like wash and care instructions for that garment. And
Keep it crispy.
Crispy. That is a white shirt. It definitely got bleached at one point. And I bet the care instruction says that. Oh yeah, bleach. So with the wash and care instructions, there's really 2 different things that you have to do. You need to tell people the proper way to do things, and then you need to warn your customers, consumers, of things that could damage that product. And so it's basically care and then warnings. And so it's basically broken down into like, they're very procedural about how washing happens. I've never really thought about washing like as much, as like rigorously as I have in putting this video together. But
This is where all those funny symbols show up.
dude, those symbols, it's like mind-boggling.
X and
That's like no
irons.
alien invasion.
Right, exactly. They're pretty serious.
So we can break it down. You want to do the first one?
Take it. You got
All
this.
right, I got it. So the first one is you just have to talk about the wash instruction, and there's basically like 2 things you could say. You could say like, hey, hand wash this, or you can use a machine to wash it. And then of course, if machine washing it will damage it, you should have a warning that says no machine wash.
But if it won't damage it, don't put that warning in. Just because if like you want people not to machine wash, but they still can, it's actually part of the rules are you can't really say that. Sorry to cut you off. Next one, I think I got. So bleaching, can you bleach it? Yes or no? If not, be specific and say that. But again, if you can bleach it, don't say it.
The number 1 3 is dry. Is machine dry okay? Or other? Like if
Hang
I can't
dry,
machine
air
dry,
dry.
hang dry, air dry, you know,
Right.
fold it, lay it out flat and dry it. There's a bunch of
Blow
dry
on
technique. Birthday cake approach.
Classic.
Classic birthday cake. What's the 4th one?
4th, iron. How are you gonna iron that thing? Can you iron it at all? If you can, what temperature? That's really important information. I'm sure you've seen those iron logos. A lot of them have an X through them, but some of them don't. Important.
Yep. And then the last one is just, the last category is just warnings overall. If there's things that you know that consumers regularly do to apparel, like ironing, dry cleaning, bleaching, and you know
Ripping.
those will...
Spitting on it.
I got weird.
Yeah.
You have to call those things out as warnings. Don't do those things. Now this rule happened much later than 1939, and so the penalties are actually like really steep. It's like $16,000 up to $16,000 per violation. So you can like rack it up pretty quick on that.
Yeah.
And they've the federal government's gone after what, like 16 cases since 1990, and the biggest penalty they've assessed is 300 grand. Ka-ching!
That's some real money.
That's a big chunk of change.
If you're selling product, you don't want to mess this one up.
So now with this, all this stuff being said, it's like a little bit overwhelming. There is like many silver linings here. The one is that if you're using existing blank base garments, all of those come with all of this information in the tags already. Now, the downside to that is basically like a lot of times that those labels have both the RN number of the manufacturer and the name of the manufacturer as well.
Branding.
So it definitely kind of like hurts a little bit on the branding side.
Right.
Your customers are gonna know like, you just printed this from Bella. You didn't make this from scratch.
So yeah, there's always that fine line to straddle, and we're actively pursuing new models to approach this so that you can have your brand and all this information incorporated on the product and don't have to worry about any of the legal implications associated with that.
Yeah, so I think like in the industry there's like you could definitely print the neck of the garment, but you have to be like super careful with your artwork that you're printing, that you got all this stuff dialed in there and that it's taken care of. So, you know, that's one element. Another way is you can relabel garments. You can actually create satin label tags with your label with all the information and get those sewn in.
Those are two primary. You do have woven. You know, you will see a woven label like the woven neck label that has everything in it. So I'd say yeah, there's kind of 3 options generally speaking in the industry that you see. And it's important to follow them and be aware of them. Check out some garments that you own when you're in the store. Notice how labeling's handled. Post in the comments. Let us know what you find. Maybe we're forgetting some things, you know? There's probably some additional questions and blind spots that we haven't covered. So definitely we want to hear from you and want to see maybe your favorite label or how it's been handled, because there are classic ways to do this.
All right, well that is it from downtown Los Angeles. You got your boy Groovies here and Kid Lips, the man, the man, the man.
Appreciate it.
All right, guys, be safe out there. Don't be racking up those labeling violations. We don't want to see that. Label, please.
And subscribe.